when I left Memphis and went to Mid-South because I'd grown up watching Lawler and Lance had the Ali Howard Cosell relationship where they could get by, but they could do that, right? And everybody knew that had been watching the show for years that Lance is the one that got Lawler started in the business. So they had that long relationship. But I went down there and immediately started making fun of Jim Ross and his clothes and his hair and his accent and everything else. And as soon as I got finished with the whole promo, Watts said, okay, now let's redo that and do it right. And Cornette, unless you're booked against Jim Ross in a match, which is highly unlikely going forward in the near future, stick to talking about your opponents. Yes, sir. And there he learned the lesson from Eddie Graham and he passed it on to me. They were not going to be booking Jim Ross versus Jim Cornette anytime in the near future. And if your announcer is your salesman, if you go to Sears, if they still have Sears, and you want to buy a washer and dryer, and you go up to the salesman and ask him about it, and the salesman is either making jokes about the product, or you know more about the washer and dryer than he does, because he can't answer the questions that you can, then that means you're going to buy somewhere else because the salesman was not prepared, was not competent. Your announcers are your salespeople. You don't want the fans laughing at them. You don't want the fans thinking they know more about wrestling than the announcer does, because that's ridiculous. They're straight, and they should be played straight. And that's, but that's in wrestling when the object is trying to sell tickets.
And obviously, as you said, the relationship with Lawler and Lance was known and had built over many years on Memphis TV. So it was a little bit different. But in general, if someone came in there or someone, started new like you did, were you ever told anything about how to deal with Lance and Dave and specifically things not to say or not to do?
Well, everybody knew don't touch him. I think Lance did like maybe 2 physical angles in 40 years there or whatever. You didn't touch him. And you could, in the process of being a heel, you goes, very, very funny. Where'd you get that big nose? Blah, 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 or whatever, but just a steady promo on them wasn't going to make anybody any money. And you treated them with respect. And also since Lance, was pretty much a member of the office and was in the guy's eyes, along with Jerry Jarrett and or Lawler and Dundee, whoever was booking was running the TV show. You didn't want to piss Lance off. And so you tried to maintain your composure. I remember one time, Gorgeous George Jr. is going back and forth with Bill Dundee, and they're promoting each other. All of a sudden, George forgets he's on live TV and calls Bill Dundee, "Well, you little chicken shit worm." And as soon as he said that, he fucking grabs his mouth and goes, "Oop!" And Lance had the microphone in his hand and he stuffed it in his jacket pocket, right? And, the word chicken shit has just been uttered on live NBC television in Memphis, and they got calls, and George had to apologize on the air, and he was off TV for a couple of weeks. But then there was times where baby faces came out and slipped, and nobody said a word because it was the baby face. You weren't going to call and complain about the baby face saying something.